Good morning, friends. So good to be with you all, and it's such a joy to have this opportunity to share. Those who don't know me, my name is Vivekadevi, and I live in the community here in Ananda with my husband James, and serve in various capacities, all of which are just so a profound blessing. I know they're trying to get the sound right, so I'll just keep talking and then you'll figure it out. So today's topic, gosh, as I was preparing, so many different things came to my mind, what I could talk about. And I was listening to a talk of Swamiji's where he said that he never intellectually prepared for a talk, right? So he didn't do that. He tuned in and he listened deeply and then would ask the question, okay, God, now what? What shall we do now? Right? In every moment, writing music and books and everything, just kind of taking like, he had just, the talk I listened to, he had just completed the lessons in material success. And so he was in India talking and saying, some of you know that I've done a program for 365 programs of giving talks, and that I wrote 2 small books, and he mentioned the books. And then just today I finished the lessons in material success. And the amazing thing of Swamiji is that he never saw it as him doing it, right? I know someone's going to come and help. Thank you. I will try to not move too much. We'll see how that goes. I'm pretty expressive in my movement when I talk. So let's see. So Swamiji never saw it as himself, right? He really would. He would mention all these things. They were happening through him, and they were amazing things. And so it was worthwhile to speak that truth, but never from a place of him doing it. So maybe I'll take, I don't know, Karen? The hand, yeah. Sure. And then we'll does that feel like that's working? Okay, I think that's probably better than it's not hearing all that. So, I was just thinking of these different, the example of Swamiji, the example of how do we allow ourselves to be that channel of energy, the affirmation today of power, right? It's like, wow, God's power, I have the power of the universe coming through, and that's the invitation. We say these affirmations, they're declarations, Swami said, that they are the truth. And so we say them to declare a deeper reality, that we are able to try it on, practice it, and then, one day, one moment, sometimes we experience it. And then how do we experience? When we have the power of the universe, how do we work with that power? Ego, friend or foe. So, it is not obvious. It's a journey in my experience, that living in the question of where is this coming from? What's motivating this choice? How am I making this decision? Why am I making this decision? What aspect of, is it my highest self that I've tuned into? And I don't answer that all on my own, but I do live in that question. And then I have teachers and ministers and guides to, especially big decisions, to check in with them about. So Asha often talks about when we're looking at something, evaluating it from the string we pick it up by. And so I was, listening for, in terms of this talk, so many different things came to me. And what's the string? And to me, it's discipleship. I felt like discipleship, that's the string. And I just came from this summer, the Living Discipleship Program, which was a truly amazing program. So if you ever have an opportunity to take that training, and it really is a training, I highly recommend it. For each person, I enjoyed watching how it deepened them, right? That we individually kind of met the challenges we needed to meet, and were given the inspiration that helped us take our next step, and came home with more power, definitely more power. So in reflecting on discipleship, one of the things that I look to when making decisions, aside from if it's a big decision reaching out to a friend, a trusted teacher or guide, is the Swami talks about making a decision and continuing to listen. So noticing, well, what is the fruit of this? And we have a teaching in yoga of nishkam karma, which means we're not attached to the fruits. So we don't go into it feeling like, well, I'll know it's a success if ... which the ego loves, I have to say. That Master said the ego is the soul identified with the body. And I often think of that in terms of the teaching of the yugas, that the ego is in Kali Yuga. And it just loves form. It just loves it. I mean, that's been my experience in my life, is that it is always going towards, well, if that turns out that way, it will be perfect. And Dwapara Yuga is energy. So Dwapara Yuga says, well, no, let's look at it differently. In these teachings, Master said that there are 8 aspects in where we can experience God and know God, touch God tangibly. Wisdom, peace, calmness, joy, love, power, the vibration of sound, and light. And so those qualities are energetic, and they are guides to help us know when we're making a decision, are they increasing? Any one of those increasing? Right? And so Asha told the story one time of she was the village was she was kind of put in charge of something that went all the way to a certain point, and then the outcome wasn't seemingly on an egoic level kind of a great outcome, but it was done. Like what needed to happen happened, and Swamiji told her, that's enough now, we're going to let that go, it's gone as far as it needed to go. And Asha said she was telling the people who had been involved, because it was a costly process, and but what happened for her is how she grew, that it was very meaningful for her, and it expanded her. She grew spiritually because of it, and she said, in her humorous way to the group, we might have all done this for me. This might have been all about my growth and my next step. And, her friends could join her in that, because people are more important than things. And that's a core teaching of Ananda, that when we're making decisions, when we're moving through this journey, when we're put in charge of a project or, inviting someone else to step into leadership, we're always listening for that individual. How is it helping them? And if it isn't helping, we really want to step back and reevaluate, because that project externally succeeding, it's not that important. It's hard to say. The ego just feels like, well, how then do we put all our energy in and show up dynamically like it matters, right? It matters. That's how we do it. We need to do that, but be living in a deeper reality, listening on a deeper level. Who are we becoming through the process? How are others being shaped? What's happening for them? Right? And so that teaching, so this is all kind of part of the teaching. And I was reminded, one of the stories that came into my mind was in my 20s, I had been praying very, very deeply for happiness, which the ego is in the teaching of the Mahabharata. So in Living Discipleship, we had these amazing, beautiful classes on the Mahabharata, and just little segments. Tim, and is it Shantz? Is that his last name? So if you ever have an opportunity to listen to him talk about this, I recommend it. I think he might be coming to Palo Alto at some point. Such a treasure. And he just invited us every day to be looking at these warriors and saying, he said the challenge is that the egoic side of the warriors look good. They look good. So it seems like, well, isn't this a good thing, right? Karna, for example, who is known psychologically, he represents the attachment to happiness in this world. So Karna is always, like, well, if this happens or this happens and this lines up, if we can get all that right, then we'll be happy. And our culture just sells that to us every day, all day long, that happiness comes externally. okay, so if I'm not attached to that, but I feel dharmically called to take action, right? So it's a balancing act. The answer we might think is, well, no action then. Let's just leave the world completely. And in terms of the yugas, Asha said, but we're not in Kali Yuga. So in Kali Yuga, yeah, we could just say it's not worth it. I mean, it's a dark time. We need to just go and be in the light. But Dwapara, ascending, this is a time of sharing and being engaged. Each of us in our own way, each finding and figuring that out. But Tim was talking about karna, happiness, attachment to this world, and I was praying every day for happiness. I just was really needing happiness, and Master said that's what all of us are looking for. So the answer that came to me was to serve the poor. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, right? And it was actually an answer of renunciation, and it was an answer that came with tremendous joy, and it didn't match in my head at all. It's like, I was kind of thinking marriage, family. I had a good job, so I felt like, well, that was good. That was kind of taken care of. I wasn't looking for a different job. But I would feel it a lot. And a dear friend of mine connected me with a nun to talk to because I needed counsel. And I hadn't been raised in any particular religion. My family was, in general, Christian. I kind of tilt my head side to side in general. But I'm the last of 6, and when I came on the scene, we weren't talking about God. There were some challenges in life, and that's not where we went for support. As it turned out, I loved God, right? So I wanted to talk about God, but so no one could really answer questions about God. And my neighbor, I went to church with her sometimes and enjoyed it, but not all the teachings. I was like, I don't know, but I couldn't quite get answers about them. So anyway, this very good friend of mine introduced me to a nun that was part of their close family, and I met with her for a year in discernment, and she helped me listen on a soul level for what was evolving and what was happening. And the best I could figure out is I was being called to be a nun. And my mom's famous line is, but you're not even Catholic, right? I go, yeah, well, we'll take care of that. I go, well, if it's going to happen, right? So, and I became Catholic in my 20s, which was pretty radical, right? Like, what are you doing? But it felt very, very right to me. It felt right. And I joined an organization of volunteering and lay missionaries, and I was thinking of a priest. One of the things they had you do is have spiritual counsel. So you met with someone to talk about your journey, and he was a young priest. He was a Franciscan. I was in New York in the Bronx, and he was in the South Bronx, if anybody knows anything about, and this was in the 80s, and it was an intense area, and it was way outside my familiarity and comfort zone. But a friend she became a friend. She said, you should see Father Kevin. She was so right. Like, he'll be perfect for you. And he helped me live in the question of calling. What's my calling? What's my calling? Which I just feel, again, in terms of discipleship, so much of ego, friend or foe. The friend of ego is that in my experience, it pursues us for happiness. It just knows this can't be it, right? It just, until, honestly, we reach self-realization, there is a voice within that is not satisfied. And that's a very good thing. Very good. It will keep us doing the next thing, right? And that inner voice is not okay with complacency. We can fall into it. We'll be into it maybe for a while, maybe a long while, but it is there. And I love Asha saying, in our work as teachers, we never have to evangelize, because there's just no point in it. There's an inner fire in every soul, and it awakens, right? And then they come seeking. What we want to do is be able to be here when it happens, right? Share when that opportunity arises. But don't worry about convincing, right? There's no point in that. So Father Kevin was perfect for me as a spiritual advisor. And one of the things that he said, I was very reminded of in our reading today, in terms, so I'll just say what he said to me, is that he said, there's a downside to taking a religious vow. There's a pitfall. And we'd been meeting for a long time. And he said, what can happen is you can feel like you've arrived. You can feel like, well, what more could I do? I mean, I've given my life to God and everyone knows it. And he said, and the other downside is that everyone feels the same way, right? They're like, wow, you've given your life to God. Wow. And so he said, really it's the beginning. It's not the end, but it's easy to make it that. Very easy to make it that. He said, so for you, if you don't choose it, and he wasn't telling me what to choose, he said, it's possible you could spend your life wondering if you were giving your life to God by not taking that vow. That the question would keep you moving forward spiritually. That could be a very good thing. He said, if you take the vow, you want to live in the question. Like, don't let it drop. And I was reminded again, reflecting all of this when we talk about Kriya, because that can happen with Kriya. Is that, okay, did it, check, right? Like, it's the beginning, right? But there's such a long journey to get there, it can seem like, okay, well, aren't I there? Are you? I don't know. Self-realization, is it, because that's there, and everything else is on the way there. And let it be joyful, right? So that's really important, and part of what Father Kevin represented for me, and I feel it was completely a divine gift. Just one of the happiest priests I've ever spent time with. So it was wonderful to see, and I got to see throughout that year people very happy in their vocation. Very real, very happy in their vocation. And so one of the blessings for me in being here at Ananda is the opportunity to continue to grow into renunciation. And to take vows. When James and I took our Tyagi vow, I just felt in the deepest way like, okay, it just took 30 years, that's all, right? Just 30 years to say, okay, now I get it, I'll do it. But like when it's right, it's a big step, but there's a beautiful readiness for it, and you welcome it in. So I just want to tune into the part of, for each one of us, listening to ego, friend or foe. How is that ego helping you move forward in your journey? And how are the spiritual teachings supporting you to recognize the difference between that which looks good and that which is good for you? And there's a beautiful quote in the Gita that says, this is a paraphrase here, but it's better to fail at your own life than succeed at someone else's. And I would say that's one of the greatest challenges we navigate, is things you could do well, but maybe they're not the best thing for you. Things you think, I don't think I do that very well, but it might be really good for you. Right? And so people are more important than things when we're held in a spiritual community and cheered on and encouraged. Like, yeah, you're growing. Look how much you're growing. It's like, yeah, but I don't think I did that very well. It's like, you gave it your best. And you gave it your best. So the power of that, of being able, and I would say again, lifelong journey of discernment, of how to know these things, how to recognize those 8 aspects of God, and are they increasing? Right? Are they increasing? One last thing I'll share that Tim shared with us about discipleship. I'd never heard it before, and it's just been so powerful for me. He said in the Gita, so for those who don't know, the Gita is right in the middle. I don't know if it's exactly the middle, but it's right in the Mahabharata, this great epic battle that Yogananda gave wonderful teachings on, incredible teachings to help us. And in the Gita, Arjuna, like everything has happened to finally battle's going to happen. Finally, all these things. It's an amazing tale. And so there's this conversation where Arjuna talks to Krishna about the battle, and that's the Bhagavad Gita. So Tim said that in discipleship, in the Gita, when Arjuna goes to Krishna and says, I choose you, he's been given an option. You could have the world, you could have everything, which was such an ego choice. And Duryodhana, it's so fun to I say fun because we had a skit up there and they did a beautiful job of, Keshava was Duryodhana and did it amazingly well. Of like, I want everything. I want the army. I want all these things. And beautifully Arjuna says, I choose you, Lord. I choose you, right? Duryodhana's like, okay, that's a ridiculous choice, but thanks. Yeah, I've got everything. You've got the Lord who said, I'll be with you, but I won't fight. Like, whoa, okay. So Tim said that's in discipleship, that's when we recognize the path, we recognize the validity of the path in our life, we choose it, and we say, yes, I choose it, and we commit energy to it, right? And that's a devotee. So that's a devotee. Discipleship, living discipleship, which was the training we were in, is when you say, I'll listen to you. It's like, oh, isn't that interesting? You don't just choose God, the divine, you listen. You say, okay, you steer the chariot and I'll keep asking. What now? What now, God? Swami's saying, okay, God, now what shall we do? And that invitation to say, I've not only chosen this, but I'm committed to it. And to go within yourself and ask that question, am I? Right? It's a beautiful question. Am I giving everything? If I've chosen a path, how am I giving myself to that path and listening to be guided on the path? So, yay for the ego to get us forward, and yay for the soul to recognize the true power and let it flow through us.
Brave were the people who lived in these hills. Brave the great warriors who confronted the foe. To defend what is holy, to defend what is true. Our Lord of mankind did this duty bestow. Brave were the people who